So Matt LaFleur just had a press conference, and I want to go through and break down the biggest things he said in his press conference. But I want to start off by focusing on one specific question where he was asked about the final drive. He goes into detail about what he thought about the way the defense was playing, and it's pretty interesting. So here's what he has to say on the final drive. He says this: first couple plays, they hit 2 checkdowns. You're fine with that. And then we're playing, Joe called man coverage, and we're playing way off, which we shouldn't be in that situation. We called another man coverage. That's when we got beat on that 7 cut. We just got to be better with our eyes, and you can't be peeking in the backfield. And then Bill Huber of Sports Illustrated asked this question, which I think most people were thinking if you were watching this press conference. And he says this, Bill Huber says, were the corners playing off by their own choice, or just was that the call? So was it Joe Barry, or was it the players themselves? And Matt LaFleur sort of sat there for a second, and you could tell he was figuring out what to say. And then he said this: that is something that we're going to have to get corrected, Bill. If we're calling man, we've got to be tighter. So clearly, Matt LaFleur was not trying to throw anyone under the bus, and it just makes me wonder, whose fault was it? If I had to put a guess on it, I would say that was Joe Barry's call, in my opinion, because I feel like I've heard Matt LaFleur talk about certain players and say they need to do this better, they need to do this better. I do think, though, when it comes to coaching, clearly if you're the head coach, you don't really want to criticize other coaches because clearly the media can get spun up and cause potential division. But my guess would be it was Joe Barry in that situation calling that kind of play call. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the player. But Matt LaFleur clearly saying that he was not happy with the way they were playing off there. He was fine with the 2 first plays, apparently, the first 2 checkdowns. And I guess it was that third play where I think Carrington Valentine was 10, 15 yards off the ball. They throw a pass on the outside receiver who was facing off against Carrington, and he gets maybe 8 or so yards. There was just so much cushion. And so at least it's nice to see that Matt LaFleur agrees with most of us, because I think most Packers fans were frustrated with the way that defense was called and played, at least in the final series, which allowed the Giants to go in there, get into field goal range, and win the game. So let's hope if we get into a situation like this in the future, it changes. But I just do feel like with Joe Barry, we've seen this happen lots of times, where maybe it's 3rd and 10, corner's playing 12 yards off. Maybe it's a late game situation where you need to hold the team in check and the corners are playing way off. I would just have a hard time thinking that it's the players every single time, because if Joe Barry was in line with Matt LaFleur and what he wanted to see here, you would assume in that kind of situation that if that's what Joe Barry wanted for them to play closer, they would, because if they didn't do it once, you would assume the next time that he would get onto them on that. So my guess is that it was Joe Barry. Please feel free to let me know what you think the real answer was, but Matt LaFleur was not willing to share that in this press conference. If we go on for the rest of this press conference, he didn't have any updates on the injuries to Jaden Reed or Dontavian Wicks. He did say that was a tough watch in every phase when it came to watching the tape. Said he watched it on the way home from the flight back to New York, or from New York to Wisconsin, where they got back at 3 a.m. And clearly, every phase was struggling last night against the New York Giants. He also was asked about Anders Carlson and if he's firmly committed to Anders Carlson, who recently has struggled a lot, has missed some PATs, missed a field goal last night. And Matt LaFleur said he is committed to Anders Carlson. Doesn't sound like they're planning on making any kind of change at kicker. And if you look back at training camp when Anders Carlson was missing lots of field goals and struggling with consistency, the Packers were pretty adamant that they were going to stick with him through the tough times because he is a rookie. And for a part of the season, he was playing really well, and as of late, he has struggled a lot more, but it sounds like the Packers' plan is to stick with him. And, I think considering the leg he has, how much power he has, you would hope that he can fix his consistency issues because he can make it from incredible distance. So, hopefully, as his rookie season ends, he will be able to find that consistency. Then Matt LaFleur was talking about stopping Saquon on defense, where they did a good job for a majority of the game. But he said there were about 4 plays where they gave up huge runs where he believes was around 109 yards. He said there were missed tackles, missed assignments, and you can't have that. And there's no doubt, I was rewatching some of the game, that a few plays are just massive running lanes. Basically what happens, Packers defenders don't get off their blocks. Giants block it very nicely. They had some big runs there down the stretch, one of which helped the Packers because Saquon Barkley fumbled the ball. But this is a Packers run defense that is nearly dead last. I think they're one or two spots away from dead last in the NFL when it comes to rush yards allowed per game, and clearly that needs to be fixed. And Matt LaFleur sounds like he believes Part of that is missed tackles, missed assignments, guys not coming down, filling the holes properly, and that needs to be solved and fixed going forward. He also says they got messed up in protection a few times on the offensive line. And I would say there was some more pressure this week that Love was having to go up against. Wink Martindale loves to bring tons of different kinds of looks. And a few times Matt LaFleur said they were not properly aligned to combat that and just didn't I guess, block as they should in that instance. So Jordan Love definitely was facing a little bit more pressure last night. It wasn't terrible the entire game, but there were definitely some moments there. He also talked about Jordan Love and how he was happy with the resiliency Jordan Love showed near the end of the game to start off poorly and then to come back and lead that, go-ahead touchdown drive where the Packers were in a position where they could have won the game if their defense would have stopped the Giants on that final drive. And that is one thing that we've seen consistently from Jordan Love. Even when he starts off slow, which you don't want to see, but when it does happen, he can at least come back and play well. He doesn't completely lose it. He is able to start to find some consistency, and when you need him to make big plays, lots of times he has come through this season, and I feel like with a young quarterback, that is one thing you really want to see because there's going to be times where, the first half doesn't go your way. I mean, there were plenty of times back in Aaron Rodgers' day when, he was off the first half, comes back, plays well, and brings the Packers back, and that's what you want to have in a quarterback, a guy who is able to do that whenever you need him at any point in time. Matt LaFleur then talked about the two-point conversion where they were calling the end around, and I know many people were looking at that call and saying, the past few times it didn't work, why'd you call it there? And Matt LaFleur talked about it. Last night I heard him say that it was fully him. He shouldn't have called the play. But today he went into a little bit more detail. It was probably after he rewatched the tape. And he said there were 2 missed blocks at the point of attack. He said he still wanted to take the blame, basically. But he said that when there's opportunity there, they need to execute. And he was saying that if they would have gotten their blocks, they would have scored there. So clearly things did not go well there. If the Packers would have gotten that 2-point conversion, then the field goal the Giants made would have been a field goal to tie it, which maybe would have led to overtime. Maybe the Packers win that game if they get that 2-point conversion. So a big play in the game that was not able to be executed as it should have. Then he talked about Tucker Kraft, tight end, who I think was the leading receiver last night in the Packers. I think he had like 4 receptions, around 60 yards. And with Luke Musgrave out with his lacerated kidney, he's definitely taken some huge strides forward. And Matt LaFleur himself said that he's as improved as anybody. And so it is nice to have another rookie player who is starting to take those strides forward. And it reminds me of Brian Gutekunst and his willingness to let go of Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis. It has allowed, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft to get a lot more snaps. And now, especially with Luke Musgrave not playing, Tucker Kraft has gotten a lot more snaps, and he's really taken advantage of those opportunities. And so even though right now with the Packers and at least the struggle we saw against the Giants last night, the fact that even Tucker Kraft is playing as well as he has, I think bodes well for the Packers and their future as they look ahead to the rest of the season and the years to come when it comes to tight end talent, wide receiver talent. He also talked about how it was a challenge taking Christian Watson's speed off the field with him not being able to play with his injury, and he said it will be great to get him back. And I think it's interesting to see that the first game the Packers don't have Watson, and at least in the past few games, they struggle to move the ball on offense, where Watson sort of coming out and playing well the past couple games led to the Packers, I think, finding success on offense. And just to have him out there, clearly a huge difference maker on the field with his speed, his ability to make defenses really key in on him and focus on him, opens up things for the rest of the team. So that's pretty much it from Matt LaFleur in his press conference. If you want more Packers content like this and you want to receive the news the second it happens, feel free to subscribe and turn on the post notifications so you never miss any Packers content. But that is all I have for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.